This is one of the talks that I'm actually myself was very looking forward to. The title reminds me of what Steve Jobs once said, that in order to make great products, you don't really need to ask consumers how to build them because they don't know. I don't know whether this is somewhat related to what you're going to say, but
I think you peeked at my slides. So.
Okay, so thanks for coming, and I'll pass the mic to you.
All right, cool. Can everybody hear me? Is that right? All right, good. I want to talk really briefly about motorcycle racing, which is one of my true loves. We're in Europe, so we can actually talk about this. I'm an American, and no American's ever heard of motorcycle racing or cares, but I do. And at the end of the 90s and the early 2000s, there was a racer who was known as Valentino Rossi. He's one of the all-time greats, and he came onto the circuit from the amateur circuit. Well, actually, he was coming up through the development league, and you know, he impressed people right away. He won a championship, which is no small thing. He was very young. And then he won a second championship right after that. And back-to-back championships in motorcycle racing are pretty rare, particularly at MotoGP, which is kind of the Formula One of motorcycle racing. And the problem was that his bike was Honda's machine, right? And so Honda started, because it helps them sell bikes, they started whispering in the paddock and saying, well, you know, Rossi's very talented, he's young, but he's very talented, but the real reason he's winning is because he is using a Honda motorcycle. And Rossi's crew chief actually kind of took umbrage to this and was annoyed by this, and so he was famously quoted in the press as saying, actually, motorcycle racing is 80% rider, 20% machine, which, if we have any F1 fans in here, is kind of the opposite of Formula One, right? They say it's 90% car, 10% driver. And so everybody kind of laughed about this a little bit. And what happened was actually Rossi decided to change equipment at the end of his second championship season, and he went to Yamaha, which was, everybody agreed, was the worst bike in the field, right? And he proceeded to win 2 more straight championships, okay? And so now, today, if we were all to go to the track and we were going to suit up and ride a motorcycle and race for the first time, you would have an instructor and they would come out and they would say, the thing you have to know about motorcycle racing is that it's 80% rider, 20% machine. And this has become immortalized, right, because of Rossi and Jeremy Burgess. So I want to remind everybody that we're talking about product development here today. And this is really, really hard stuff, okay? We go to conferences, we try to learn, but you hear all these, I've already heard 3 or 4 examples and going to various talks of, $11 billion IT failure over here and, $1 billion failure over there, and we've all had failures of our own. So this is really, really hard stuff, and it's good not to lose sight of that. But there are 2 kinds of hard, right? Playing the violin is hard. I did that for a few years, and I just got to the point where it didn't feel like you were kind of strangling a cat, But it's very difficult. You need talent, you need dedication, you need perseverance, all of it. You need instruction. But then there's exercise, right? Going to the gym is hard. And that's a different kind of hard, because for most of us, we can go to the gym and we can do some push-ups and we can run, we can ride the bike, right? But the problem is even though we can do all these things, we don't, right? We don't actually go to the gym. And so it's a matter of discipline. I was at a party a couple of months ago in Edinburgh, which is where I live, and somebody came up to me and said this to me, right? Aren't you like that militaristic startup, right? And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And it turned out that what they meant was, we kind of get to the office on time every morning, and we have a lot of metrics, and we have a lot of process, and we work hard, and we focus, right? And what I actually took that as a compliment, because that meant that we were doing the gym type of hard thing in other words, we were showing up and we were being disciplined about our approach. And product development, I would submit, is a very, very high discipline, right? You need to actually work on this over and over again to get a good result. So, who am I very briefly? My name's John. I work for a startup that's based in Edinburgh in Scotland, not in England, right? Scotland, part of the UK. And we are growing very fast. And, I'm really privileged to be a part of the organization. We got about 30 team members, just to give you an idea of the size. And we build a software product that is built, basically dedicated for training providers. It's kind of like an ERP system that helps them run their whole business. Or if you've got a training department, it would help them run their whole training department or their whole operation. And so it's a big product that's got a lot of users around the world. And so we've learned some things about product development along the way. So very quickly, sometimes I speak at business schools, right? And I give the audience this this option, right? Would you choose a great team first or a great business model? And invariably, at a business school, everybody say, "Oh, the business model, right? We've got to choose the great business model." You can always change out the team, right? And you know that makes sense. That kind of fits in their background. But one of the things I want to mention or make kind of clear is that actually the team is all that really matters, right, in a software startup and in product development. And so, and there's been some numerous examples of this, right? There's actually a startup that's headquartered in Edinburgh, which is FanDuel. It's one of Europe's unicorns, the billion-dollar valuation company. And they started out, and they weren't doing anything what they're doing now, which is this kind of fantasy sports gambling, although they don't like the word gambling because that's illegal in the U.S., which is where they operate. But they started out as something completely different. They got it totally wrong, but they had a great team, and so they kept at it, and now they're worth $1 billion, right? So here's two quotes from Steve McConnell, which may or may not get some recognition in this audience. He is a really great author. He's written a lot of books about software development and so on. But he talks about how most people don't spend any time actually kind of bettering themselves in their profession, particularly software developers. And then we got another quote from another really famous guy. Not really, it's me. And I would just say that, you know, when we're looking at product development, which one's the motorcycle and which one's the rider, right? The team is Valentino Rossi. The team is the rider. And everything else is the motorcycle. And so if you're looking for the biggest bang for your buck today, I'm going to give you some principles and techniques for how to build products that nobody can actually tell you what they want. But you'd be better served making sure you've got a really high-functioning team first and then implementing these tools, okay? So very quickly, think back to university, right? I've got this really good friend who's got 3 daughters. They're now all grown up, but at one point, one of them was 5, and she went off to school. And she came back from school as a new school year, first couple of days at school. And I said, you know, Valerie, how did you like school? And she said, Mr. Peebles, I hate it. And I was like, well, you know, that's okay. What do you like anything about it? No, I hate my teacher. I hate my subjects. I hate my classmates. I hate everything about it. I hate getting up in the morning. You know, like I hate the food, right? There's nothing she didn't hate. And girls, particularly that age, can be very articulate sometimes. And I said, well, Valerie, it's going to get better. Don't worry about it. And she said, no, you don't understand, Mr. Peebles. You are 22 right now, and you're still in school. Right? Because I was a senior in university, okay? She says, I've got my entire life ahead of me, right? I've got years and years of this ahead of me. And I thought, well, I don't really have a good answer for that, okay? But if you think back to university, and I talk to university students, and I say, who here likes group work, right? And 0 hands go up, right? Literally none, okay? And you're like, oh, well, nobody likes group work, and people say, oh, you know, I hate it because, you know, somebody does, they loaf and they get the same grade as me, or, you know, I don't like working with those other people, I couldn't choose my group, all this stuff, right? And I said, guess what? This is going to be the rest of your life, is group work, okay? It's going to be the rest, and everybody just, like, the light just goes out in everybody's eyes, right? But I do say there is hope, okay? We've all done group work in university, and we've all been in there, and it's group project day, and everybody comes into demo, and everybody hates their life, except there's always that one group, or you may have seen it before, when they come in, and they're excited, and they've gone above and beyond, and they really like each other, and they take too much time, and so the bell rings, and they're still going, right? That actually is a well-functioning team. You just saw one, okay? And that's what we should be shooting for when we're developing products, because a great team can change the world, okay? You don't need a lot of people. I think the core design team at Apple is like 16 people, right, for one of the most valuable companies ever created in history, all right? That's pretty astonishing when you think about it. And in a software company or a software organization or an organization that's dedicated to shipping products, a team is really all that matters. Right? And one last thought is all of these things that we talk about and focus on with Agile and Lean and Scrum, and we all hate each other because we're all bickering about which way is the best way to do things, they're all predicated on having a great team. You cannot be successful on any of these methods if you do not have a highly functioning, great team. Okay? So if you're about to embark on a project to develop a product and you don't have a great team, guess what? You're going to fail. 95% of software projects fail. 95% of software startups fail within the first 18 months. And the reason is because they don't have a good team. Nobody has ever stood up here and said, the reason we failed was because we chose Ember.js over AngularJS, right? Nobody's ever said that in the history of the world. It's always been, We didn't have the team. We ran out of money because we didn't have a team, so people wouldn't fund us, right? These are the main things. So, you know, agile and lean, built on assumption of great teams. And just one more slide, just so we kind of get it really rammed home, okay? Team, 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 right? Okay, now let's talk about products. So, how do I build the perfect product that people will love, right? It's like the holy grail, you know? It's what we all fantasize about, you know, where we sit here, we're like, this could be it, my career, right? This is my thing, I want to do this, right? Well, the first thing we got to remember is that everyone is full of crap. It used to say everyone is full of shit, but we're videotaping this, and I thought, well, maybe not. That's not the best idea. But, you know, so I said it just now. But everyone is full of shit, all right? Like, this is true. You just got to understand this, all right? Except for your customer. Except they're also full of shit, just in a different way, okay? And just for some clarification, a customer means, like, a thing that's paying you money, right? Sometimes I come up and we talk to startups and they're like, oh, we got 50 customers. I'm like, wow, what's your average revenue customer? They're like, 100 pounds. And I'm like, oh, so you got 5,000 pounds of revenue or whatever. And they're like, no, the 49 of them are not paying. You know, I'm like, you have one customer, dude, you know? So a customer is somebody who's paying you money. And this is really important because if they're not paying you any money, they don't have what in the game? They don't have any skin in the game. They're not invested. They're just lying to you, right? They're just telling you what you want to hear because they're your friend, they're your grandmother, they're, you know, anybody you can convince to use the product. It's not real unless they're paying for it, okay? It's really important. And building a product, essentially, is solving a problem, okay? We talk at our company, and I say, you know what, I love technology. I always have to have the latest iPhone. I've got the watch, which my wife calls the walking douche detector, right? If you see one of these guys, you know, they're a douche, right? I love gadgets, and I love technology, and I was a programmer, and I really enjoy programming, and I'm a kind of a geek at heart. But if I found a magic wand on the street, and I could just wave it, right, on one of our customers and make them wildly successful, we would do that, okay? We'd sell that. We'd sell one wave per month for 50 pounds, right? We don't actually care about the software insofar as it's not making our customers successful. We want to solve problems with our software. If we're not solving a problem, then there's no reason for it to exist, okay? And the good news is that problem solvers, people who solve problems, and products that solve problems are really, really rare. And, you know, they make more money. They're very key to the team's success. If you become a problem solver or you got a product that's a problem solver, you're going to go far, okay? But this kind of is really rare, all right? You might go into an organization, particularly a larger organization where they kind of tolerate more stuff or there's more places to hide, and you may not find any problem solvers. This is why consulting is such a big deal in bigger organizations, because consultants, the good ones, can be problem solvers. And it's really rare. Like, you really have to focus on this and make this a core skill, and we should all be concerned about whether or not we're truly problem solvers. But the good news is that you can do this. You can be taught. These are techniques like going to the gym that you just have to exercise over and over again. You do not have to have any innate talent to be a great problem solver, and that's really encouraging to me, at least, because when I started out on this, I was not very good at this. I'm still not very good at on some measurement scales, but you know, we have been able to ship product that really delights our customers and makes them successful. So, this is sometimes a controversial thing to say, particularly at an Agile conference. One guy went, "What?" when I said this at a conference up in Edinburgh one time. And I said, "Whoa, just let me finish there." He's probably English, you know. But, you know, building a product really should not be customer driven, okay? So we have the what slide, right? And here's the quote that got stolen from the guy in front. These are two quotes. The first one's Steve Jobs. We talked about it. You can read it. The second one is attributed to Henry Ford, although he didn't actually say this, okay? It's apocryphal, but it's widely quoted, so we'll quote it again, all right? And there's a clue here, right, on what we're trying to do, which is customers, and we were at a conference last week, and one of our board members was given a presentation about product development, and he talks about how customers won't let you get above those local maximum, right? If you're climbing a hill and you've got these peaks, right? Customer feedback will only get you so far, and then you're going to be thrown off because you don't have the right strategy to revolutionize what it is you're doing, all right? So instead, building a product should be workflow-driven. Another way to say this is job-driven. Another way to say this is results-driven, okay? You need to really understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And it goes back to that quote about the horses, right? Actually, we're just trying to efficiently move people in better, faster, cheaper ways, right? That keep them out of the rain, more comfortable. We don't care about horses. We don't care about animals. We don't care about any of that because we need to focus on the goal, which is to move people more efficiently and better, right? So, do we have any Dungeons and Dragons players in here today at all? Yes, there's always one, two, three. Yes, okay, excellent. Sometimes they hide, but there's always one. You know, I have sometimes in a bigger crowd, they're like, I'm not going to say anything, and then afterwards they come up, they go, I'm a Dungeons and Dragons player. I was just scared to admit it, right? So it's okay, right? But Dungeons and Dragons has what is known as the core mechanic, okay? And the core mechanic, as any of us know, is you roll the D20 or the 20-sided dice, and that's what you do most often, okay? And they teach you this, and I stole that phrase because I think it's really cool. But this is the core mechanic of solving problems and building products. And that's know, define, and solve. Okay, so if you remember these three words in that order, not the other way around, know, define, solve, you're going to be well on your way. All right, so what do we mean by know? Okay, I really love the talk that just went because she was talking a lot about going out and visiting customers, okay? If you're building a product and you have not worked the job or the jobs of the people that you're building for at least one full day, right, you're going to fail or you're doing it wrong, okay? Now, sometimes people are like, well, that's crazy, right? Like, you know, our customers are on the other side of the world and they're doing highly technical things and that is going to be so difficult to get there. And you're like, well, what's worse? You want to fail or do you want to succeed, right? Get on a plane, get out there, because the harder it is to get with your customer and be alongside them, the more separate and more out of touch your solution is going to be, okay? So that's the inverse rule, right? The harder you think it is to visit a customer, the more you're going to fuck your customer with your shitty product, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? And you need to work the job, you need to observe the job. Now, when a previous company of mine was in healthcare technology, and we sold solutions for pharmacists. And this was when I was really young, and I'd kind of observed the job, but I never really worked the job, and I hadn't done it for more than an hour or two. And we rolled out a big update, and it was supposed to make their lives super easy and so much greater. And, you know, call in, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? You know, we're 30 minutes into the first day, and they're like, this thing is a piece of shit. And I'm like, what? And I go out there and I sit down and I realized actually we were slowing them down because in pharmacy, all that matters is speed. You got a person in front of you. They're probably contagious, right? So you don't want them standing around too long breathing on you, right? They're waiting for a prescription, and you need to get them out of there, right? They want to go home. They want to lay down. They've just been into a horrible experience with the doctor. They got a prescription. It needs to be filled, okay? And so we hadn't prioritized. We hadn't thought of the time factor when we were designing the product and when we rolled it out. Everything worked. It was just too slow, right? And so you really need to understand also the motivations and incentives at play. If there's money moving through your product or through your process, you need to understand why and how. You need to know everything about your environment that's possible, okay? So this is just so key. You can't even begin the problem-solving process or the product development process unless you have at least worked the job and have a good understanding of what that is. I went and filled prescriptions for 2 weeks at a pharmacy in order to make sure that I knew what was going on. Now, we had to do it under legal process, but I would fill the prescription, and then the pharmacist would check it. And by the end of the time that I was working there, I could have passed a pharmacy tech certification, right? Because I knew that job so well. And that meant that we never had that experience ever again. We rolled out a product and people were like, this is totally shit, okay? So it really helps. All right, the next one is define, right? So we say a lot at our company, don't solve a solution, discover or define the problem, okay? Problem discovery is probably the most important part of this process. Well, after knowing what you're doing, right, after knowing the environment, you really need to make sure that you're discovering the right problem to solve, okay? A lot of times I see people who know a lot about the environment, but they're busy, they don't pay attention, and they actually start solving the complete wrong problem, and it comes back and bites them. So, which do we go to first, right? If you're sick and everything's feeling really terrible, do you just go straight to the pharmacy and say, give me some pills, right? No, that's ridiculous. We all go and see the doctor. In fact, it's a legal requirement in most countries, except for, ones in Asia, that you go to the doctor first. And this is really, really important. You are the doctor in this part of the process. And this sounds really dumb, and sometimes it's like, wow, this is so basic. This is so dumb. Why did I pay for this, right? But it's really important, and many times people just forget about it, and they gloss over this step. So let's talk about what we're supposed to be doing when we're discovering the problem. I loved earlier when she said we just have to ask why, right? Because that's one of the things that is so effective. It's actually a technique. I think Toyota came up with it, and it's called the 5 whys. And, it's really common. We've all had this in this audience where you get a ticket in from a customer, and they're like, can you please add this column to this report, right? And actually, we leap at those, right? We really want those kinds of tickets because we know what they're asking for. We know where the report is, we can get it done pretty quickly, and we can send it back, and we can delight the client, right? This is something we actually crave if we're in a complex software solution scenario, okay? But the problem is we don't sit there and ask why. We say, why? Well, because Bob needs it. Why? Well, he's the financial guy. Why? Because he can't see it. Why? Right? We're on our 4th why. Well, he doesn't have the right permissions. Why? Because you didn't understand how our permission system works, right? Oh, boom, we just solved it. We didn't need to do anything rather than ask why 5 times. All right, the other one is the reject the premise of the question, right? A lot of times people come to me and say, why is our shit so slow? And I'll say, I don't actually agree with that, right? I'm going to reject that premise, okay? What do you mean by that? And they'll say, well, when I'm on my phone in a tunnel in a train, it's really slow to load, And you're like, actually, you just need to wait till you get out of the tunnel and things will be a lot better, right? And then now we haven't gone through this ridiculous optimization exercise and wasted a lot of time and money. Okay, so always reject the premise of the question. I'll never accept a question that somebody gives to me without drilling in and getting more context. Okay, it's annoying to some people, but it really helps when we're going through this iteration stuff. Take nothing as a given, right? That's pretty self-explanatory, but don't listen to your users. Your users are going to mislead you. They're going to say things like, give me another column, all right? Instead, watch what they're doing and understand their job, okay? So, I already went through this example, right? Can you add another button, whatever? Can you do the thing to the thing, right? It doesn't even matter. We don't even have to be speaking the same language. We know that that is a solution, right? And we don't want to solve a solution. We want to actually figure out what the definition of the problem is. So the core mechanic, right? Know, define, solve. And here's some homework, right? Here's an actionable improvement you could take, right? Figure out a way where you could go back and make an improvement to your team because that will give you the biggest bang for your buck, right? How can we work together better? Is there stuff that's not being said? A lot of times one of the biggest problems with teams is lack of communication, right? I have people coming all the time to me and they'll say, I work with Bob, and, Bob kind of irritates me, and I think there's a problem, he has a problem with me. What do you think I should do about it? And I go, you know what? I think you should talk to Bob, right? And they're like, what? And I'm like, yes, I think that's the solution, right? And then they go talk, and they're like, oh, I had it totally wrong. Bob didn't hate me. We went out to lunch. Everything is great. And all of a sudden, the efficiency of that team improves. Communication is really key. Figure out a way that you can invest and improve your team, whether it's education related, whether it's just silly, going out for beer. I mean, anything like that, and you'll be amazed at the outcome. Invest in your customer personas, right? You should have a persona that's well-defined for everybody that uses your software. And actually, this is a lot easier than people think. People just don't do it. We're a little bit sloppy about this at times at Administrate, particularly when we're starting to grow or whatever. But you need to make sure you have really well-defined customer personas. And then the last two, we'll really quickly because we're running out of time, but inject into your problem discovery process some sort of know, define, solve mechanism, right? The core mechanic as much as you can. And then lastly, if anybody saw my talk from yesterday, we were talking about storytelling. The more that you can weave stories into this experience and basically personalize this problem discovery process, don't get really clinical with it. Don't say, wait, we need to discuss the requirements and that's out of scope and blah, blah, blah. Just say, look, help me understand, right? If Bob is going to the grocery store and he needs to buy groceries and there's not a cashier and he's only got a credit card, how do we get him to check out, right? Is that the problem? And people will be like, yes, right? If you can make it more personalized and inject a little bit of story into it, it'll go a long way. So thanks a lot. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. I'm always here to help. You know, I'm just a guy talking, so I would love to learn from you as well. And, you know, thanks so much for having me. It's been great.